But man, you just see, when you look back on Joseph's life, you see how God used all of these things ultimately in Joseph's life, like you said, to accomplish things that he intended from the very beginning that probably didn't go anywhere how Joseph thought when he had the dream of like, man, I'm going to be in an elevated position. I'm going to have authority and all this stuff. Next thing you know, you don't have any authority at all, right? It's all been stripped of you. But guess what? The Lord was with Joseph and he found favor.
That's right.
And then he was given authority even in Potiphar's house and in prison. You don't have to panic when things go wrong in your life, whether it was self-inflicted or not, because God is big enough to handle all of those things.
Welcome to Let's Talk About That, the podcast where we dive into conversations about life and share stories of faith. We're thrilled to be on this journey with you. Whether you're a longtime listener, someone who calls the Orchard home, or you're just stopping by, Let's Talk About That is your space to explore, reflect, and connect. Join us as we navigate the intricacies of faith, spiritual formation, and daily life as we invite guests to share their stories with us. So grab a cup of coffee, find a comfortable space, and let's do this together. This is Let's Talk About That, where you can be encouraged and inspired by God's work in our lives.
All right, welcome back to Let's Talk About That. We are here today, have Matt in the room with us. How you doing, Matt?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Coming fresh off a night of worship. So
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit. I thought night of worship was good. It was without a doubt the craziest night of worship we've ever had.
yeah, it did not lack for events.
For a lot of reasons.
lot of
It was a
things
crazy
going on.
night of worship.
Good.
But I don't want to get too deep in the podcast while burying the lead. I think what people really want to know is about your 0 to first turnaround in fantasy football. That's what people are looking for.
Well, not first, but I'm nipping at
You're 4-0, baby.
Yeah, but I lost to Lance this week. He was number one.
Ah, man. You know, still a great turnaround story. Is there a future GM career in the cards for Matt Pennington?
I don't know. I need to talk to Michael about that.
Yeah.
He pays my bills. So
You know,
unless we're
unplanned.
going
God plans the unplanned, Matt.
the Orchard Community Church Fantasy Football League or something.
That'd be wild. You know, I mean, I've always said that, I've not always said, since it's been a thing, I've said we ought to start up the Orchard NIL fund. I think that would be electric.
Yeah. I want to be there for the management team meeting when you propose that idea.
Yeah, we're going to give you $5 this week. Yeah, it's going to be great. Thoughts on college football so far this season?
You know, I said this, I think it was the week before maybe college football started. We were on the podcast just
That's why I'm asking.
And I know why you have me here this week.
Because I didn't have anybody else, or
Yeah, well, that, but also you wanted me to have to talk about college football after Miami.
Oh, no, I'm be honest. I didn't even think about that because I wouldn't have done that to you because I hate Miami so bad. I would not give them the airtime.
You know, I tell people all the time, last year really just kind of did it for me. I was already tinkering with, man, the NIL stuff, the transfer portal. I'm good with both, but not at the same time.
Agreed. Both at the
And,
same time, free agents.
I mean, now it's just the NFL, honestly.
well, no, NFL players have to honor their contracts.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But it's like the quality on the field is less than the NFL, but
That's
it
right.
functions like the NFL. It kind of takes it out of you. And then you go 2-10 last year. So, I mean, honestly, I'm only surprised if they win.
yeah.
So,
Well, hey, I know that we won't go any worse than 2-10.
yeah, there you go.
Got us a win, which I think
right.
was a lot more about Texas than it was about us.
I agree.
But, you know, it is what
But
it is.
it is what
Beggars
it
can't
is.
be choosers.
I will say this about college football. I grew up FSU fan. We went to the games. There was the nostalgia. Like, it was just the pageantry. That's what you love about college
Yeah.
football. But then you would watch guys. You would follow them. You'd kind of get to know the players. Now, all that's out the window.
That's right.
Honestly, I just watch football now because I enjoy the competitive side.
It's football.
I want to see a good game.
Yeah.
I want to see the cat and the mouse. I want to see the strategies and schemes and all that stuff. So,
Well, what made me kind of look at college football this season, and some people are like, "Oh man, this is why college football is so electric." But to me, it's not. It's the opposite. It's not. Makes me not care about it. Is the top 4 going into the preseason this year? You had Texas, you had Penn State, Ohio State, and Clemson.
yeah,
Texas is terrible.
terrible.
Penn State,
Lost
terrible.
to 0-4 UCLA.
Well, James
who's
Franklin
been
just wanted to show everybody who said he always lost the big game. He wanted to show them wrong. He can lose any game.
That's right.
You see the picture of when they stormed the field?
Yeah,
There's like when you
5
storm the
people on
field, but you just don't have that many fans.
There's literally 5 people on the field.
Ohio State, 4-0, legitimate contenders. Clemson,
Terrible.
terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, it just
That doesn't make for good college football.
it doesn't. I think on the one hand, there is a little bit more parity. I think because anybody could win on any Saturday. I firmly believe that. Look at UCLA beating Penn State, and you talk about all the emotions, and they came off the Oregon loss, blah blah blah. But still, I mean, UCLA has no business. Should be on paper, no business beating them. So in some ways, I think you get parity. In my opinion, though, the parity comes from you have less quality.
Yeah, I agree.
You don't have guys who are in the scheme and learning the systems and the nuances for 3 years. You got guys who are learning the defense or the offense in 6 months. And
parity's fine, but you also need continuity.
Yeah. So schemes are, I think, more simple. You know, you can't get into the elaborate stuff, all the disguises and things. I think it's just harder and the quality is less.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody said, and I thought it was hilarious, as an SEC guy myself, which I've never bought into cheering for other SEC teams. Like
Trey would beg to differ.
I hate most teams in the SEC.
Yeah. Trey would beg to differ, though, because when it comes down to it, you got to root for whoever's in the SEC.
I don't buy that.
All right. Next week, Trey, on the podcast, defend yourself.
Whatever. But here's my thought. Somebody said, who knew that to knock out the SEC dominance in college football, you just had to let other schools start paying players.
Yeah. It's amazing what happens when everybody gets to pay people.
But to quote Nick Saban, doesn't matter if you don't pay the right ones.
True.
Anyway, hey man, what a great Monday morning conversation. That's fun, but that's not what people are here to talk about, and that's not what we are here to talk about. I want to talk about a few things, and just really quickly, just hit it, and then we'll move on because we'll talk more about it as the series progresses. But this series has been good so far. Got a lot of good feedback out of this series, looking at the life of Joseph and, you know, unplanned, and how we serve a God who plans the unplanned. One way that we've said it in the past at the Orchard is it just so happens, never just happens.
Yeah.
Right. So
I think it goes to, if you were at Night of Worship, then you talked about this in Isaiah chapter 6. And obviously your end goal was drawing out those 3 points. But the idea is, theologically, we call it sovereignty, but God sits on the throne.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't feel that way because you go through things in life and you have emotions and feelings that, you know, either lie to you or lead you astray, or, you know, you just kind of can't see past those things. But that's the beauty of God's word. And James calls it a mirror. Yes, it sometimes reveals things that we don't want to see, but it also reminds us that when you're in the thick of it, that there is a God who sits and rules and reigns on the throne. And I love this series because that's what you see. I mean, you talk about, I've joked about it all the time, that I don't know why people haven't made Netflix series about the Bible, because some of the stories in there, and now they have on Amazon Prime, you know, they have the life of David or whatever it is. But I'm like, the life of Joseph is the perfect Netflix series. There's twists, there's turns, there's ups, there's downs. There's I didn't see that coming. You know,
there's like 4 seasons in there easy.
100%. But I think it's been good because the feedback's been good, but I think it's because people relate to this. They relate to what it's like to, you know, for things not to go according to plan.
Well, you know, the way we talked about it this week is with the language of detours, right? And to me, when we were talking about it in the sermon prep meeting, and Pastor Eddie's the one who's kind of driving the bus for this series for us. When we were talking about detours, you know, it just hit me. Nobody likes detours. Everybody gets frustrated by detours.
Right. I led with this yesterday. I need to settle the score here. Who's the driver in your family? Like, if you go on a long trip, is it you or Leanne?
Let me think about it. Me.
Okay. Yeah. Same for my
by
family.
a lot.
I'm in the
would you like to drive? Nope.
Yeah. My wife does not want to drive because she's going to be asleep within 5 minutes. Like, she's gone.
Leanne doesn't always go to sleep right away, but if she's not asleep, she's scrolling TikTok, Amazon, Instagram.
Yeah, anything but driving, right? And I get that. Like, it's fine.
I'm an AirPods guy when I'm driving, though. Like, I'm let everybody. If I'm driving, everybody else can do their own thing, and I'm listening to a book or something like that.
Yeah, I usually listen to like a podcast or something. But so you're the driver.
Oh yeah.
When you pull up Google Maps, or don't tell me use Apple Maps, but anyway,
I use Apple Maps or Waze.
Okay.
If I'm going on an actual trip, like Waze.
Good. If you want to get where you're going, use anything but Apple Maps. But anyway,
sometimes I don't really care.
So for you see a number at the bottom, and it's called an ETA. When you see that, what goes through your mind?
How much can I beat that by?
Okay, so
100%.
Whether it's 1 minute,
it's not
what we're not going to do is show up later than that.
No.
Right.
That is, you know, somebody said, what is ETA? Is ETA expected time of arrival or estimated time of arrival? I think it should be called loser's time of arrival.
Yeah.
Because I've not
100%.
ever met a guy who's not trying to beat that number.
Exactly. And so for me, the reason I brought that up is because every time you have to stop, then the ETA goes up.
Yep.
Right. And so in my family, up until 5 months ago, we were all girls. It was my wife and 2 girls. And I jokingly said, we don't stop, we stops, plural. Like we stop and then we're going to stop again and maybe another time. And so every time you do that, though, it feels like a detour because you see, hey, I was supposed to be at this location or this destination at this time.
And now you're not.
Now it's not.
Yeah.
And it's taking longer. Or you come to that traffic jam and you slow down. Now all of a sudden you have to take it off cruise control. Now all of a sudden you're not going as fast as you were. And it's frustrating. It's aggravating because you know where you're headed. And in your mind, hey, I can get there at this time. And anytime that time changes, and it usually always changes for the worse, then it feels frustrating and aggravating. And I think that's the detours in our lives is we have a destination in mind.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like we come to a screeching halt. Sometimes it feels like, oh, I got to get off the exit and I didn't plan to. Sometimes it feels like, oh, actually there is a detour because of construction. So you got to go what feels like the long way.
And that's the thing for me, those actual detours, they only feel bad because you had a plan that didn't work out.
Exactly.
But when you think about it, and it hit me in that meeting, detours are there to be helpful. They are there to help you get where you want to go and to get you there quicker, right?
Exactly. It's not the shortest route, but it's the quickest route.
It is, because the alternative is to be stuck or be wrecked.
Exactly.
And I think that's true in traffic. That's true in life. And that's what we talk about, in Joseph's life is I'm sure Joseph thought that he was going to get to where he needed to be, where his brothers and, mom and dad and, everybody would bow down to him. But it didn't get there the way he thought he was going to get there.
Right.
Didn't get there as quick as he thought he would get there. But when you look at it historically, and this is, spoiling it a little bit, which is not spoiling it because most people, if you're listening to this, I'm sure you've heard the story of Joseph. Like he got to where he needed to be when he needed to be there.
Yeah.
If he'd have been there earlier, might not have worked out. If he'd been there later, might not have worked out. He got to where he needed to be when he needed to be there. And so I think that's important for people to hear. And it's important for people to believe.
Yeah. And we ended in Live Oak. I know there was kind of 2 different routes that we talked about on Tuesday, but we ended with the takeaway thought of God's detours prepare us, like they develop us for his purpose. And I think that's what we see and will see in the life of Joseph, not to get too far ahead. But I think when you look back on the life of Joseph, you see how God will use each of these quote unquote detours to do something in Joseph that will prove fruitful for what his ultimate purpose was.
Yeah, because detours are ultimately a part of God's plan.
Exactly. Now here's the hard part, I think, for people though, is sometimes God is the one who ordains the detours. And that's where we get frustrated because we think, oh my goodness, God, how could you allow this to happen? And I think it's because, like you said, is because we have a plan and sometimes God knows better than us and his plans are higher than ours and wiser than ours. And sometimes it takes humility and surrender to say, okay, God, I'm trusting that you taking me on this detour is better than me taking the quickest route.
Yeah, I think that's 100% accurate. And the question that I asked on Sunday in Lake City is essentially, what would it feel like? How different would life be if you could see detours the way God sees detours? Right? Because the truth is we can see them that way. We just don't see them that way naturally.
Yeah.
And so what I encourage people to do after we walk through all that, is I just kind of circled all the way back and said, hey, you can see detours this way. You don't have to run away from detours. You don't have to see them as discouragements or frustration or aggravation. You can embrace your detours as a part of God's plan that's building you for his purpose.
And isn't there a level of trust there, right? To say that, hey, I'm trusting that this is better. I'm trusting God that you know more than me and that you do know what lies ahead. And so I'm trusting you when things don't go according to plan. And I think there's humility in that, that we do have to trust. I think about every time I go on a long road trip, I use Google Maps, and Google Maps will tell you if there's a slowdown ahead, and they'll basically ask you, do you want to take an alternative route, which is a detour? And usually when that pops up, I always select the alternative route because I'm trusting
that's right.
that Google Maps, based on, user feedback or people reporting accidents and construction and
that's
things.
like if you use Waze, it's like there's a faster route.
Would you like to? But I think that's the thing is they ask the question because you can stay on the path that you're on. You get to select, do I want to stay here or do I want to trust that this way, even though it's longer, is actually shorter because of the feedback that's been input. And I think that's where we get to with God is sometimes God takes us on a detour, but we have to essentially trust him that he does have a plan for this, that he does have a purpose for all of this. And why did this happen? And I don't understand. And I thought I was going to be here in my life by now and I'm not there. Or I thought my ultimate destination was going to be here. God might have a totally different destination for you. I told this story on Sunday that when I was graduating high school, I thought I was going to go to the medical field. Ministry was nowhere on my radar. Nobody in my family was in ministry. Like it wasn't even an option in my mind.
100% you'd be Dr. Matthew.
I don't know. I'm so thankful that is not the route that God had for me. But I just think that sometimes, like that whole destination changed. I thought the whole path was this. And God's like, you can go on that path if you want, but you're not even headed in the right direction.
What would we say? God's plans are better than our dreams.
Exactly.
Right. I think that's so good. So let me ask you this. Let me play, devil's advocate, a little bit. Do you think that there are detours in our life that aren't part of God's plan? Can there be detours in our life that aren't part of God's plan?
How theologically do we want to get into the weeds?
Brother, this is the podcast. We can do that.
So this is the thing. If you ever really think through the implications of God's sovereignty, at some point you're going to get to a point where you just kind of sit back and your brain hurts, right? Because how does God's sovereignty interact with the lives that we live, basically? Yeah. And so the answer to your question is, I think, yes and no. Is that nothing
did
happens?
You just say the answer to your question is yes and no?
Yes.
What? Yes and no.
Yes and no. So do things happen in your life that are maybe contrary to what God would have you do? I would say yes, because that's sin, right? Like we sin, and that's always contrary to the will of God. And yet nothing exists in your life that happens apart from God and his sovereignty. Nothing happens that catches him by surprise. And so are there things that happen that maybe we would say aren't according to plan? Yes, because God would desire that you don't disobey and you rebel and you sin. And yet we do that. And yet, because he is sovereign, nothing catches him by surprise and nothing exists outside of him. Yeah. And his control and his rule and his authority. And so theologically, I would say yes and no. Well,
I do. I'm picking at you a little bit, but I completely get that. The way that I would say is that no, there's not detours that aren't part of God's plan because God's plan has factored in your stupidity.
Exactly.
Like God's plan has factored in your sinfulness. God's plan has factored in your failings. And God allows sin in the world. He does not cause sin in the world. I fully acknowledge that is a tension, but it's a tension that we have to manage, right? That it is our free choice to rebel against God, and yet God is in some way we can't fully reconcile sovereign over our free choices.
Yeah.
That, at me, if you have questions, I will ignore them. No, my email is matt@theorchardcc. No, I think that,
but isn't that what Joseph's life teaches us?
But exactly.
That's where he gets to, and he says, like,
you meant it for evil, and God meant it for good.
There. He said, this is evil.
That's right.
Like, it's evil. This is in no way, shape, or form excused. Like, they are held responsible for their actions. It is evil. And yet God allows these things to happen and ends up in the end, he accomplishes his purpose that he intended all along. And to go back to week 1, one of the things that we see in Joseph's brothers is, what they did was evil. Joseph experienced slavery and a loss of freedom, right? His plans changed, and we would say that it wasn't Joseph's fault. Joseph's plans changed, and God allowed that to happen. And sometimes that's a hard thing for us to swallow. Is God, how could you allow this to happen? I did the right thing. I didn't do anything wrong. Somebody else did it to me, and yet I'm the one that's suffering. How could you allow this? How does this work?
So let's flip this on its head, because this is a part of the reason I brought this question up, is let's go back and look at it from the point of view of his brothers.
Yeah.
because God had a plan for their life. God had a purpose for their life. God used the evil they intended, the sin they intended with Joseph for their good.
Yeah.
To preserve their life. And so, like, Joseph is the guy who didn't do anything wrong and suffered unjustly. His brothers are the ones who did make a terrible decision. They did sin against Joseph and God, and yet God used it for their good. But see, I think that's Romans 8:28. The idea that God works all things together for good is that God is sovereign over those choices, over those decisions, and he works them together in a way that we can't fully comprehend or explain for our good and his glory.
Yeah, maybe we say it this way, just as simply as I can think of to say it, is you don't have to panic when things go wrong in your life, whether it was self-inflicted or not, because God is big enough to handle all of those things. And he's big enough to handle when things don't go according to plan from your perspective. Sometimes he intends those things to ultimately achieve his purposes in and through you. Sometimes he does things and he allows us to experience things that he's like, hey, I got a whole different destination for you. But the reality is, even if self-inflicted things don't go according to plan, that doesn't mean that God has written you off. That doesn't mean that God has abandoned you. It doesn't mean that what you did has somehow overpowered God and you have completely excluded yourself from his existence and his rule and his authority. Like, he's big enough to handle all of these things. And we say this a lot, and you've alluded to it, is that God is sovereign over our stupidity. Sometimes you do stupid things. Sometimes you make really stupid decisions, and we all have. And we all probably look back at our younger years and we're like, man, I did some really stupid things. And God is sovereign over that. God accounts for all of those things. And it doesn't mean that the purpose of your life is lost. It doesn't mean that God can't call you to himself. It doesn't mean that he can't redeem you. It doesn't mean he can't rescue you. It doesn't mean he can't save you, because he sent Jesus in spite of all of those things.
That's right.
He sent Jesus in spite of who we are. And that's the beauty of the gospel. The beauty of the gospel is that you become new, that you are born again. You are made new, so that all your stupidity that you did because of your sinful past, like, that goes away in Jesus. As far as who you are, like, you are made new. You are a new creation. The old has passed away. There may be consequences that exist with you for the rest of your life, but who you are in the eyes of God is seen through the lens of Jesus. And that's the beauty of the gospel, is that you can be made new, that you can be born again, and that your sinful past does not condemn you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. The good news is Joseph's story is not anywhere near over.
Exactly.
It's just getting started. He's in prison, but his story is just beginning. So we're gonna keep walking through that for a couple of weeks, and I think that's gonna be good.
Yeah. I'm really excited to get to the end of the story, because I think, like, you just see,
brother, I've been talking about the end of the story since week 1.
Yeah, I haven't acknowledged it. I haven't talked a lot about it, but man, you just see, when you look back on just, like, you see how God used all of these things ultimately in Joseph's life, like you said, to accomplish things that he intended from the very beginning, that probably didn't go anywhere how Joseph thought when he had the dream of, like, man, I'm being in an elevated position, I'm going to have authority and all this stuff. Next thing you know, you're in a pit and you have the opposite of authority. You're a slave. Next thing you know, you're in Potiphar's house, and then you're back in prison. You don't have any authority at all, right? It's all been stripped of you. But guess what? The Lord was with Joseph, and he found favor.
That's right.
And then he was given authority even in Potiphar's house and in prison. And so,
you know what? Actually, before we jump into Night of Worship, because I do want to talk about Night of Worship, couple questions out of the text from this week that I'm curious your thoughts on. Number one, Joseph is referred to as well-built and handsome.
let it be true of us.
I said, I want to find out who Joseph paid to have that put in scripture.
Yeah.
And then also I see why his brothers hated him.
Yeah.
To be clear. No. So, one of the things I mentioned in Lake City.
Well, hold on. Okay. Just to get a little nerdy here. We used to have a segment on this, like the nerd out section, but
we did.
So Joseph's mom was Rachel, right?
Yes.
And scripture clearly says way back when Jacob was still in the dating phase, he clearly wanted Rachel because she was good looking.
Well built.
Leah,
not so much.
Not so much. She probably got the brains, but she didn't get the looks, right? And yet, because of sin and deception and all of that, I mean, can we just genetically say that Joseph probably was better looking than his brothers?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, his mom genetically. So anyway, there's probably something to that.
Absolutely, there is.
When you look at the guy in the mirror and then you look at your younger brother and dad gives him a favorite coat, you're like, I like this guy.
Yeah, that 100% see why his brothers hated him. Yeah. So I said this in Lake City, and I think this is very much reading between the lines, and this is not the clear meaning of Scripture. To me, it's an interpretation. But I tend to lean towards when Potiphar heard from his wife the account of what she accused Joseph of, it says he was furious, had Joseph thrown in prison. I tend to think he was furious at her. And that he believed Joseph, and that's why he's thrown in prison. I talked about that in Lake City, but I'm curious, where are you at on that?
So I think we talked about this on Tuesday. I disagree. I'm not saying that's wrong. It's definitely plausible. In that case, I think if that's true, who knows? Maybe she had a history. I don't know. But if that's true, then maybe he's furious because he's put in the ultimate predicament of, I can't allow this to get out in town, that
I got to do
here
something.
I am. I'm in a place of status and position, and I have to do something, right?
All about saving face.
Yeah, I mean, so that's plausible.
Here's this guy who's like brought him wealth and prosperity, and now he's,
So that's why, though, I tend to read it differently. I tend to think that he's furious because maybe he does believe that here's this well-built, handsome guy, and he tries to make an advance on his wife. So I'm going to assume that his wife is credible, right? And he believes what his wife tells him. I think, though, he has him put in prison and not killed because deep down he's in this ultimate dilemma of, man, this guy has been really, really good for me. I have seen how everything he's done been successful. My stuff has been successful. I mean, think about the investment.
Yeah.
He was sold for 20 pieces of silver. I don't know what Potiphar paid for him, but let's say he paid 30 pieces of silver. So those guys profit 10 pieces of silver. And Potiphar's like, dude, my fields are great. My house is great. I literally show up, I kick my feet up on the couch and I say, hey, what's for dinner?
That's all he does.
And so I tend to read it as, no, he did believe his wife. And then she hands him the cloak, whatever. Maybe it was compelling. But I tend to think that he really didn't want to have Joseph killed because he actually did value Joseph. And he was appreciative, even though you can be furious. I think deep down it was like, man, I really don't want to kill this guy because he's been so good for me and my family.
Well, I think the reason I lean toward the other side of that is that there is a clear level of trust that Potiphar has in Joseph.
Yeah.
And the fact that this author of Scripture goes far as to say that all he had to concern himself with was what's for dinner, just like you said, that he just didn't, and that he didn't even check behind Joseph on it. To me, I'm like, I have a hard time seeing you go from that level of trust in a guy to if somebody you trusted that much betrays you, I can't imagine the rage and the fury that you feel. And I think that with the option of him killing Joseph with his own hands was on the table, and instead he threw him into prison. In my mind, I see it as, I'm not so sure he bought it. I think he believed Joseph. But like I said Sunday, that's just 100% Chip's opinion. Read between the lines. It doesn't change the narrative of Scripture. At the very least, what we know for sure is that God wasn't done with Joseph, so Potiphar couldn't hurt him.
Exactly.
I think it was William Carey, who said that I'm invincible until God's done with me.
Yeah.
So, I think that's what Joseph, where he was at. So, anyway.
I have a crazy story about that. I'll tell you one time. I went to school at Liberty with a guy. He was actually from India. His dad was a pastor, and his dad was held at gunpoint one time for preaching the gospel in India, and the guy pulled the trigger and the gun didn't go off. So, crazy story.
What if I told you that happened to my dad as well?
That's crazy.
Actually, I take back, the gun did go off, but missed, like point blank.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Wild.
Hey, if God's not done with you, then it doesn't matter. You're invincible.
All right. Well, let's just focus a little bit to night of worship, because can we just say, and we've already alluded to, craziest night of worship ever.
It was crazy.
We had a lot going on at the night of worship. So if you weren't there, there's a lot of excitement. There were a couple of health scares that happened on the stage and off the stage. We won't go into all that because maybe by the time you're listening to it, it's not a big deal at this point. I will let you know that I have personally talked to all parties involved this morning that we're recording this. Everybody's doing good, feeling better.
Yeah. Bumps and bruises, but
yeah. Feeling better, but man, it was a moment. And I've said, and I don't mind saying it, for the record here on the podcast, man, I was shook when I got up there to bring the message that night, because just minutes before walking up there, I find out that a friend of mine who was there had to be, taken away by ambulance to the hospital. I didn't know anything about it. I get up there, start praying, and then that happens on the stage. I'm like, golly, and I think one of the things that we've talked about, Matt, you and I talk about it with anybody who listen. I'm not the most spiritual guy out there. I'm not looking for a demon or an angel hiding behind every bush. I also believe that we have a real enemy and that spiritual warfare is a thing, and that one of the most deadly tools of the enemy is distraction. And so I'm not saying that a demon or a devil caused those things. I am saying that we have a very real spiritual battle, and I think it was evident that was true last night.
Yeah. I agree. I think distraction is huge. I think you see it in your day-to-day life all the time. We were talking about fantasy football before this, right? Like there's so many things that...
Wait.
Hold on,
let me explain. Call fantasy football a distraction, Matt?
I'm saying that there's a lot of things that we experience in our culture that are luxuries or entertainment that are not inherently wrong, but they can easily become distractions when they consume our attention and our affection.
So much of what we're busy with is just not essential.
And so, I think that's one of the tensions that you walk through in life, that you have things that you can enjoy so long as you enjoy them in the right order. And so I think there's a lot of distractions that we face. I think in that setting last night, some of the cool things were, and I was excited about this because, and we alluded to this, and this, if you're listening to this and you don't go to the Orchard, this may sound arrogant in some way, but if you go to the Orchard, then you know this to be true. I mean, there's been a lot of new people lately, and I was really excited for us to be together in one place.
I was really excited for a lot of our new folks who've not got to experience a night of worship to get to experience that as one church.
I mean, there's just something about coming together in one place at one time. And that's always been true. I've always loved nights of worship because of that, whether you just get to see people that you know from other locations that you don't get to see every Sunday, or just to, maybe you're new and you're invited into this moment and you realize like, man, there's people here that I didn't even know. There's other locations that I know about, but it just doesn't register with me because I don't see it. And to be able to see and to be reminded last night that we are one church. I always look forward to that. There was I don't know if we're calling it a praise team, a choir.
Well, I'm calling it a choir, brother. I mean, it is what it is. It's funny because we joke about when the Orchard was founded, Pastor Eddie said, the Orchard's not going to have a choir. Well, we did.
And I loved it. I mean,
it was not your traditional choir. What it was, if you weren't there, are members of our different bands, vocalists who all gathered together to sing with the lead singers last night.
Yeah. But just the energy that they brought, the enthusiasm, the worship, I think it was really cool. And I know we hadn't done that before Night of Worship, so it was just really exciting.
No, it was good.
Cool to see that.
And I think all of those things go together to paint a picture, and we talked about it. Eddie mentioned it. You mentioned it. I talked about it, is that we acknowledge we're blessed with good, incredible worship on Sunday mornings at the Orchard. We have some talented folks. And in the part of the world we're at, like the fact that all those people go to the same church really creates a great experience for us. But there's something special when we all come together in one room, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is a picture of, man, that's what heaven's going to be like. That's why heaven is going to be just so far beyond what we can comprehend, because we're going to be gathering with the church from every generation and every corner of the globe, who's going to come together and worship Jesus, who is worthy of all of that praise. And whatever magnification the nights of worship have over Sunday mornings, heaven is going to blow that out of the water exponentially. And I think even the choir added to that, because in heaven, we're going to have the choir of the angels and the four beasts around the throne. And, I just think there was such a foretaste of heaven in that gathering last night that it was incredible for me.
I think that's true of a foretaste of what's to come. I think it's also a reminder of who we are at the Orchard, but also just the church in general. I thought about it last night, and we have some guests who come, and we're excited that they're there. We invite people to come and be a part of that night. Because you can be a guest at the orchard, but there are no guests in the kingdom of heaven. We're family. And so I think last night was also a reminder, as I hope every Sunday is, it's not just the opportunity to come together as one church in one place. It's also a reminder of, man, we live for Jesus Sunday to Sunday, Monday through Saturday. Like, this is not a one-off event that we do every week and, hey, that was good, let's do it again next week. I mean, when you follow Jesus, this is who you are, that where you go, he goes with you. And I know you alluded to that in your message, but I think when you look around and you just see, and what I love about Night of Worship is you don't just see it, you hear it, is that you're reminded you aren't doing this alone. Yes, Jesus goes with you, but you have people around you. And I think that's the essence of the church, is sometimes we've missed that. We've made church all about programming and being a part of something for a designated amount of time. And yet when you read through Acts, when you read through the New Testament, like they were in the thick of it together, and they prayed for each other, and they encouraged one another. And sometimes it's
a gathering.
Exactly.
Right? It is a gathering of all of those people and voices together. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that, I heard from everybody. You talked about it, is just hearing people sing.
Yeah.
And there's something about being in that, old block building, in that block room where the echoes are there. But man, just hearing the voices of people like belting this out, it's just an incredible moment.
Yeah. I think it's and this is why I go back to everything that happened is I think it was meant to distract, is because in that room last night, the goal was not to have an orchard event. The goal was to lift up the name of Jesus. And we did that. And the gospel was proclaimed through song, and it was a celebration of who Jesus is and what he's done. And I think anytime that you do that, you can expect some type of opposition or distraction to try to get your eyes off of Jesus, or to try to get your mind to wander on other things. But what I love about it is I don't know about for you, and I assume, or if you were there, but man, if you missed Jesus last night, then you missed it. If you went home just kind of with this feeling in your stomach of like being pumped up, then man, you missed it, because everything that we tried to do was, we want to point to Jesus because these things are true that we're singing, that we serve a living God. We serve a resurrected Jesus, and he is alive, and he has accomplished victory for us over sin, over death. And that changes the way that you live your life. You don't live in fear. You don't live in isolation. You belong to a body. You belong to a family, and you live in victory. And that's the thing about Unplanned Moments. Sometimes you don't feel that, but when you gather with other people, you're reminded of that, even when you can't feel it.
I think that worship is such an incredible paradox of when we pour out our worship to Jesus, we are filled with truth and joy and encouragement. And it's just so crazy that it's one of those things. Like, how do you explain that to somebody who's never, experienced it? Like this morning, like I've been like wiped out this morning. That's a typical thing for preachers on Sunday or whatever. But I just felt a little bit more today, maybe battling a little cold, something as well. I don't know, but just kind of feel wiped out. And you're reminded, man, that's because worship is a pouring out of yourself, right? It is a pouring out of your emotions, your words, your thoughts. It is the unspoken prayers going on while you're singing these things. But while you're pouring out, you're also being filled.
Absolutely.
And it's just an incredible dynamic that I agree. If you missed that last night, then you just really missed the point of it.
Yeah. I think that's how I feel on Sunday too, is you don't realize that there's I would love to see like the science behind it, but like you just feel when you pour out, like you feel in some ways drained, like mentally or physically or emotionally. And yet the encouragement on the other side of that is like, man, I think of what Paul says is, the spirit is willing, but the flesh indeed is weak. And I think sometimes even in your weaknesses, even in when your flesh is weak, that the pouring out physically, but the filling spiritually is sometimes what we need. It is just to think and to be reminded that, hey, you're going to get tired if you're doing this for Jesus. We began the year
absolutely
too blessed not to be stressed. You're too blessed because of the gospel not to be tired. You're too blessed not to be stressed. You're too blessed not to invest in the people around you. And the reality is you're going to experience exhaustion. You're going to experience fatigue. You're going to get tired. And yet, as Paul says, but the spirit is willing. And so we have to continue to surround ourselves with other people at the church. That's the whole point of the gathering, is that it becomes a reminder of, man, this is who we are together, but I can do this because I have people in my corner. I can do this because I don't have to do it all by myself. I'm not the sole one responsible for this.
And I thought you, Matt, in particular, had an incredible moment, just kind of sharing with our church the significance of having people in your corner and hearing those voices in your life. And I think that really resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah. I struggle not to talk about what I talked about last night. I struggle with the idea that I don't want people to be confused. Like I'm not seeking sympathy when I talk about.
Yeah, no, I get that. I completely
those
understand.
Things. What I want people to know is that you can be in a place that's difficult. You can be in a place that's hard. You can go through an unplanned moment, to go back to the series. And I want people to know that that's not the end of your story, that God has not abandoned you, that God has not forsaken you. And you feel the emotions in those moments. You feel the weight and the burden of those moments. And so what I shared last night is January of 2023, my dad had a heart attack. And I thank God that for 7 days, I got to be with him in the hospital. That the heart attack initially did not take his life. And so got to see him, got to talk to him. But then after about a week, he ended up passing away from congestive heart failure. But 10 days after his funeral, we had a night of worship in the same auditorium, in the same location. And so in January of 2023, at a night of worship, we were singing, obviously, emotional time, a lot going on. You've lived through this with your mom. And I remember we sang, the song was Over All That I Know. It's a vertical church produced the song, but it's declaring that God is sovereign, It just so happens, never just happens. And we're talking about God's sovereignty in the series. But the song came on and it declares that God, you are over all that I know. And God, sometimes I don't know, but you're over that too. You're over the things that don't necessarily make sense to me, or the things that I disagree with, or if I would have planned it different. And I think the song is it's a declaration of, God, I'm choosing to trust you in this moment because you are over all that I know and all that I understand, because of who you are and that you're over all of those things. God, I'm choosing to trust you in this moment because I don't know and I don't understand. And I remember sitting on the front row in Branford High School at the auditorium on a night of worship, very much like last night, where there's energy in the room and there's voices that are echoing, and the night in and of itself was great, and there's energy and there's excitement. But I remember standing on the front row, and it was like there was like a knot in my stomach, and I physically, as hard as I could not make myself sing. Like the words would not come out.
I completely understand that.
Because we're singing, and I know the lyrics. We'd sing it on Sunday mornings. I knew the song, and I see the words on the screen, and in my head, I'm thinking, God, I know this is true, but right now I can't. I physically cannot make myself sing. And so I sat there unable to sing. And I just remember in that moment, like thinking like, God, I know this is true, but I can't make myself sing it. And in that moment, I heard the echo of the voices reverberating, the old block building. And when the room's not very full, it becomes a distraction. But when that room is full, man, the echo adds to it. And I just heard the reverberation of voices echoing off the walls. And it was like God said in that moment that it's okay. You don't have to sing. Right now, you don't have to sing because other people are in your corner. Other people are standing shoulder to shoulder with you. Other people have their arms wrapped around you, because that's what it means to be part of the family of God. That's what it means is you can know this to be true and not feel it in the moment, or not be able to say what you know to be true. And that's okay. You don't have to, Because in this moment, you have brothers and sisters who are able to do that for you, and they're declaring the truth that you know to be true, but you can't physically declare it right now. It's okay. And it was as if God just said, just sit and soak and listen and know that you don't have to right now because you're part of something much bigger and other people have your back and they can take it from here, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful and tangible picture of what the church is.
It's literally who the church is. And the reason I shared that last night again is, and maybe this is the way the enemy works, just to kind of try to silence us, but it's not to gain sympathy from people and saying, oh man, I feel so sorry for you. It's that, no, man, I want you to know if you're there last night and you're going through an unplanned moment, you're going through an unplanned season, you're praying for a prodigal son or a daughter, or you're praying and you're confused and you're frustrated and you're aggravated and you're disappointed because your doctor said, man, I got bad news, or whatever it is that you're going through. Maybe you're there and you're like, I want to believe this to be true, but I don't feel it, or I can't muster the words and I can't physically force them out of my mouth. The reason I shared that is because I want you to know that you're right where God wants you to be, and he hasn't abandoned you. He hasn't forgotten you. He still sees you and he hears you and he loves you. And maybe for you, you need to be reminded of that, not by what you're seeing, but by listening to the voices that are singing around you. And let that be a testimony to you that God does see you and he does hear you, and you belong to a family that when you can't, they can. And I think that's exactly what the church is. It's that we actually love each other. We actually care about each other. We actually pray for one another. We're actually invested in the lives of other people. We're not just gathering on Sunday morning and having a 2-hour or hour and a half event and saying, all right, figure it out, go live life by yourself throughout the week. No, man, when you belong to Jesus, you belong to him, but you also belong to each other.
Yeah, I think that when you grasp that, it changes the way you see the church. It changes the way you see worship in the church, right? We talk about how people are, I can worship in my car or worship in the deer stand or whatever. And I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying it's not the same.
100%. And I tell people this, I've had this jokingly, I've had this same discussion with some of my buddies. And I say it this way is you can worship by yourself, but you cannot be the church by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is true. Some of my favorite moments of worship are just, sitting in a stand or driving in my truck or whatever, but you cannot be the church by yourself because the church is always plural. And you should thank God for that, because there's coming a day, or you've lived through a day where maybe you can't, but the good news is there's people around you who can. I think for me, if I could say it this way too, that was a difficult time. There's still, and I'm sure you get this, there's still just certain days or memories or whatever that it's like, man, I didn't see this coming.
Yeah, brother. Well, I'll tell you, it about got me because, not this Sunday, but last Sunday was 12 years to the day since Mom passed away. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that it was the actual day until I'm in church and I say it. And I was like, oh,
and then you just get this kind of this flood of emotions, and it just kind of, it hits you in that moment.
Yeah. And it's weird how that works, but it's also, interesting how God, I think, creates us so that those things hit us in waves sometimes. Because I think if they hit us all at once, they might overwhelm us. But because they hit us in waves, you're able to take them as they come. Yeah. And I was reading this morning, in 2 Corinthians, and just reminded again, and you were an example of it last night, Matt, that, that God comforts us in our affliction so that we may be a comfort to other, and that Christ sufferings are poured out for us so that we can be poured out for others. Yeah. And it is just that, we see the comfort that we have in Jesus. And so then we want to be that comfort for others and 100%. Point them to Jesus. And that's really the beauty of the church, that you don't get that online. You don't get that through a screen. You get that through being in the room with people pointed in the same direction, of one mind, of one heart, lifting one voice. And when that happens from one church that's normally in multiple locations, but now, man, I'm getting to be a part of something so much bigger than what I see every week. It's just a special moment. And I really think that we got to experience that last night.
Yeah. And I would say that, to kind of come full circle with the Joseph thing, is that God has a purpose for these things, that God uses these things in our lives. And And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that having gone through all of that with my dad and all of the emotions and stuff that come with it, is I feel like God has also better equipped me to meet people when they go through hard moments.
That's right.
And I don't know why or what or how, but this burning in your soul, and I think this is one of the things that that there's a calling, right? Is that you have this burning in your soul. It's like this itch that cannot be scratched. It's a desire for people to know Jesus. And I feel like having gone through all of this, that like the flame was just turned up. And like now you have this intense passion and burden. And the burden is, I want people to know the Jesus that I know, because even when you go through your lowest moments, he is there with you and he has not abandoned you. He has not forsaken you. And you see this in the life of Joseph. And I feel that in my soul. And I think it's helped me be able to meet people where they are. You know, I've met with people who have lost people, sometimes unexpectedly and sometimes tragically, and being able to do funerals, and you just kind of walk in and you walk in and the message is, man, I want to offer you Jesus because that's the only thing that I have to offer you. And it's the best thing I could ever offer you. And I'm saying this not because I'm a professional that gets paid to tell you that. I'm telling you this because Jesus was with me when I walked through it.
Yeah, because I've experienced it.
I've experienced it, and I want you to know the Jesus that I know. And it's like, man, this passion has just been turned up. And I think God has used it ultimately for hopefully his glory as other people come to know Jesus.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. That's what God does. And that is a way that what our enemy meant for evil, God still turns it
Absolutely.
for good. So wind it down. Let me ask you this. Favorite song from Night of Worship?
Oh, honestly, we've sang this a couple times now in Live Oak, but Rachel sang it last night, I Believe.
Yeah.
Man, the chorus of that song, when I can't quote it right here.
Brother, one day soon you'll split the sky.
One day soon you'll split the sky is like,
right
let's
now.
go.
Let's do it.
The gates of hell will not prevail. The church is still alive and well.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's a proclamation. Jesus, because of who you are, because you accomplished victory on the cross, because you defeated the grave and you are alive today. Like, we go forth encouraged and empowered and equipped by your Spirit to go and to be the church. And I don't know, that song right now is just...
That's number 2 for me. Number 1 right now for me, and it's been a kick for a minute, is Who Else? Mm-hmm. Just Who Else is Worthy?
Who else is worthy?
Brother, like, I don't know, man. I'm locked in on that right now.
Yeah.
Like, who else is worthy?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Well, this is our hope. Jesus is our hope, and this is what we proclaim.
Yeah. Well, it's good. It's good. I'm already looking forward to our next night of worship. But before our next night of worship, we're going to get together next month for Harvest Celebration and then for Impact Sunday. So it's going to be good to enter in this season of the year. We get to see a lot of familiar faces from our different locations. And man, I hope you guys enjoy it as much as we do. So anyway, that is all that we're going to have time for today. And I hope that you guys will join us back next week right here on Let's Talk About That.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Let's Talk About That. We hope it encouraged and challenged you as we continue to grow on this journey of faith and embrace community together. If you have any questions, thoughts, or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us through our social media channels or visit our website to stay connected. Your support is what makes this podcast impactful. If you found today's discussion meaningful, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, share the episode with a friend, and leave a review. Your engagement helps us spread the message and connect with others who can be encouraged through these conversations. Until next time, we hope this episode inspired you to live out your faith this week. Keep the conversations alive and remember we're all on this journey together.